Good morning and welcome back to Banter and Beans, where we talk about what's brewing in Vermont. So grab your coffee and we're going to dive in. Pat is sharing a bill with us this morning. It is Act 63, which is an act relating to data privacy for minors. And we're gonna dive in. So take it away, Pat.
Thank you, Ben, and hello, everybody. As Ben said, I'm going to be doing S69 this morning, which is an act relating to an age-appropriate design code. And before we started videotaping, I was talking to Ben about, for those of you who are somewhere a little younger than me, but still older than Ben, we used to have a huge discussion back then about subliminal messaging. That's a very hard word to say in the morning, subliminal. Too many vowels or letters or something. Anyway, if you won't remember, it was it was everywhere on the news, radio, TV, about what's happening to, and particularly to kids, that there would be this subliminal messaging about things that people wanted you to not like or do. And this is pretty similar to this, except it deals with the data world that we are now living in, the data age, and electronic devices and stuff. So I give the legislature credit for signaling this issue, because it really sounds serious, and good for them. So this act the establishes regulations for online services and products that are likely to be accessed by minors. It emphasizes the protection of minor data and outlines the responsibility of businesses in handling this information. And I'll just give you a summary. I am taking this summary from our website. We did a summary of this act. It's the act itself, the wording's a little difficult to understand. I've read
A
it
little
more
difficult to
times
find.
yeah, I've read it, which is a lot of bills. You keep reading them and they get worse. But this our summary is really good if you want to look it up on our website.
It
So
puts it
the
into
Vermont,
plain English and
yes, exactly. I read
we
this one and went, oh, well, that's
makes
better
it
than
so
mine.
much easier.
Yeah. So it introduces as S69, and then the governor signed it, which then became Act 63. And it establishes regulations for online services and products like we just discussed. It includes definition for key terms such as covered businesses, which refers to entities operating in Vermont that generate revenue from online services for minors and personal data. And our children, as you know, are on their equipment like 24/7, right?
Devices or
Yeah,
their
right.
devices
Device.
24/7. Yep.
Yep. I watch them when I walk outside. They're everywhere. Then they're not looking
Yes.
up. It's a wonder they don't get slammed into a light pole or something.
Well, and
The
I
bill,
think something that's interesting to note here is that also passed this year was a cell phone ban, personal
right,
electronics ban in
right,
schools, right? And I think that's important for a number of reasons, and it does kind of go hand in hand with this bill, right? That we're
yep,
seeing, if you've read the book Anxious Generation, that's where a lot of this new policy is coming from, talking about how kids are struggling with mental health issues at a rate we just
right,
haven't seen before.
right,
And a lot of it comes down to the loss of like meaningful social connections because, they're so stimulated
yep,
from electronic devices and online information. Young brains have a hard time filtering out
yep.
and distilling that information the
I
way that an adult does.
I read an article the other day that they are actually already seeing the difference with the kids in classrooms without the cell phones. I mean, they went on and on about what they're seeing, the dynamics between kids, that they're actually, oh, wait for it, talking
Yes.
and laughing, and just whole different atmosphere, which must be better for the teachers as well, to get some feedback and satisfaction about how they're teaching.
One of the underappreciated things that schools do for kids is social emotional learning. And this is true going back, through the entire history of education. Like one of the things that is really important is that social interaction that kids get, because they
Yep, right,
learn from each other. And we've seen this now in a number of different ways. But those social connections that you form in person, there is it's a fundamentally different chemical reaction in your brain
Huh,
than online interactions. Like you cannot replace an online interaction. um, you cannot replace an in-person
right.
interaction with an
Well,
online interaction. It has a different impact on your brain, and you don't form the same social connections.
right.
And the
I
lack
agree.
of social connections leads to anxiety.
Well, now that's that as an adult, I'm staying home from work and doing work by Zoom. It's the same thing, probably magnitude 10 times, but it's exactly the same thing. I don't even want to think about working at home. I do now, but I can get up from nobody's looking for something from me. Anyway, let me just continue with this bill. The bill emphasizes the protection of minor data and outlines the responsibility of businesses. And I hope businesses know they better be checking this bill out to find out what they have to do because the legislation mandates that covered bridges, there's a mistake.
Covered
Covered
businesses.
bridges, businesses adhere to a minimum duty of care, and they have to set their protection at the highest level they've got on their systems to protect these kids. Uh, I looked on the internet for examples of, they call it black space, that within the black space, it is where they're having these signals to kids or to adults about what to do and not to do. And I looked all over the internet. I couldn't find a good example. I wanted to show it while we were talking about this. But businesses really need to check to make sure if you're making money off of kids and through some kind of game or some kind of notice or whatever education, you have to look for the black spaces and what's there. I didn't see it on the internet, but I'm sure it's there, and it's very important to understand it. And it includes level of privacy for minors, and it includes limitations on visibility and interaction with adult users. And that's very important, obviously, for adult users who are surfing the net to find vulnerable young people. I'm sure that's a real responsibility for businesses, isn't it? They better make sure businesses see this and understand how important it is for them. That falls on their shoulders. How do they know, Ben, if you when we cover this, if I'm giving you the right age or not? Um,
Yeah, that is,
I
and that's a
mean,
big
they
challenge.
can just lie.
So exactly. So that's the problem is that there's a number of challenges. Like these are all important things, right, to talk about in terms of how we protect minors from,
Right,
you know, influences on the internet that they may or may not understand.
right.
We've seen a number of young people get radicalized on the internet, right? And so, how do we protect kids, not just for the social emotional learning aspect, but also from, other things that happen online? So, those are all important things.
Yep.
Um, but who is responsible for that is the question, right?
Yeah,
And
and that isn't set out here. The Attorney General is empowered to enforce the provisions, which this doesn't take effect until 2026, July 1st, the start of the new fiscal year for the legislature. So I'm sure between now and then there will be a lot put out because there's things that businesses are going to need to do to their systems to flag if a kid is under the age of 18, and they're going to
yes,
have to do some improvements to their security.
so like
Um,
one of the things that's going to happen is like the privacy on by default, right, is going to be one of the requirements. The other requirement is to basically treat minors differently
right.
than adults. And so, the challenge there is businesses are going to have to figure out what that means for them. And this is basically every single business because,
Yep.
the way that this bill was sold in the legislature is that, okay, this is going after big social media companies, right? This is going after the Facebooks and the Instagrams and the
Right.
TikToks of the world, right? That's how this was sold. But looking at the language in the bill, It's actually almost most businesses in Vermont. You see like the definition of covered business in
Yep,
the
I'm
state.
pulling it up now, and it's boy, it's everybody. You're right.
It's everybody.
Yep.
It is not just the big social media companies. So that means if you have an online presence as a business owner, you have to adhere to this law. Now, the AG may not come after you if you don't, but they could. And so this is really the impact of this on small businesses who have to figure out how to comply with this law is pretty significant. And that's something to be aware of is that, any business who has an online presence, which is basically all of them,
Right.
is likely going to be subject to this bill. And you're going to have to figure out how to determine, is this an adult? Is this a minor who is navigating my website? And I
Yep.
need to treat them differently based on that.
Yeah.
That could mean that you get a pop-up when like every website in Vermont's going to have a pop-up that says, are you over 18? Yes or no? That could mean that you just turn off tracking for everything. But then the problem for that is like, you know, businesses, particularly online businesses, are incredibly dependent on tracking, especially if you're dependent on ad revenue. You need to know
Oh,
who's visiting your website.
yeah,
So,
that's the enforcement of this is going to be very difficult. Let me just read you some of the criteria for businesses that are covered. First one is conduct business in the state. There you go. That's about everybody, right? If you conduct business here, you're subject to this law. If you generate a majority of your annual revenue from online services that are reasonably likely to be accessed by a minor. The third one is collect consumer personal data, which that's when I click off. When I go through the screens, if I want something and it gets to the personal data part, I'm like, nope, and I click off and don't follow through on it. The last one is determine the purpose and means of the processing of consumer personal data. What do you do with the data once you get it? And then the bill defines what a processor is anyone who processes personal data. So if you send that information to a data house and they're compiling the data like maybe a Facebook or one of those bigger companies that let you know who your clientele is, who are you appealing to. And if you read the bill, it gives you a minimum duty of care. What do you have to do that will get you to comply with this law? And that goes on for everything. And they talk about to avoid causing emotional distress, compulsive use, or discrimination against minors through data processing or service design. Oof, I only have to get the Attorney
so a little
General on.
wordy, a little
Yeah,
wordy about that,
I
huh?
don't know how they're going to enforce this. I think we should ask somebody from the Attorney General's office to come on and talk about this because you're going to come into my computer and check. I mean,
Yeah.
and you have to have some reason to do that. So somebody's got to pick up the phone and say, "Hey, is this company all right?" To give you purpose to go in and look. I mean, what rationale would you have just to pick a business?
Yeah, exactly. That's part of the concern is like, this reads very much like this is giving the attorney general tools to go after big social media companies. But the problem is the definitions are not protecting small businesses either,
Right. Right.
to who may not even be aware of these requirements or have the tools to comply with them.
Yeah, I was going to say,
Um,
especially some of our businesses, making a grand assumption, but I don't think a lot of our business owners in downtown have the wherewithal to do and understand technology the way it's going to need to be done for this bill. So they
yeah,
may be caught short by just their lack of knowledge of what this all means.
or
That'd be
or
me.
lack of tools to
Yep. And
put in
money.
place. Yeah,
And
or
then there's
money.
the money access, which is probably really, really huge. So how are we
So,
doing on
Pat,
time?
we got like a minute or two left,
Okay.
but something I wanted to talk about in relation to this is every bill that we review that the legislature comes out with, every one that we post on the Campaign for Vermont website, we do a bullet list of what's good and what's bad about the bill. And one of the things that we flagged in this particular bill um, is that there's a provision in here that prevents adults even parents or guardians from accessing um, the online activities of minors, so that it basically prevents parents from being able to see what their kids are doing online. Um, and that's an important thing, because if parents don't know what their kids are doing online, you can imagine all of the repercussions of that. um, and in one of them, not perhaps not the least of which, is protecting them from online predators if they're doing something that is unsafe, and also from bullying. We see a lot of cyberbullying
Right.
online, and if kids are pretty good at hiding that stuff. And so that can be going on in the background, and parents may not be aware if they can't see what their kid is doing online. So I think that's an important thing that
Who was
hasn't been
fighting
talked about.
against this? Were you tracking who was fighting against this? This has pressed a button for me when I read it. That's just wrong because
Yeah.
they're slowly taking parental rights away from us. And you need to know what your child is doing for their safety, for the safety of your home and your family. Um, it's not just the child that could be in danger, it could be you in your home. And I
Or
find this,
kids in the school up the street. I
yeah,
mean,
it's terrible. I didn't anybody fight against this?
no, I think a lot of people missed that this was in here, to be
I think
honest.
we should use our little communication capability to let people know this is it. This is wrong. I'm sorry. I disagree with this 100%. They keep taking away the responsibility of a parent. And I want to see what happens if the kid's been on the thing and gotten into trouble. You don't know they're going to turn to the parent and say, "Where were you?"
Well, that's the thing. Like, there's a tension in our society right now. We have, parents that are now being charged as accessories to school shootings, right? Because
Right,
they're not
exactly.
intervening. They're not
Right.
intervening when they see their child getting
That's right.
radicalized. But at the same time, on the other hand, we're taking away any of the things that they could have used to identify that there was an issue. That doesn't make a whole lot of sense.
No, it doesn't. I'm getting sick of looking at all these things that they're slowly just whittling away at. I am a parent and a grandmother. I think that we're just slowly taking away the parental responsibilities and giving it to the state. Sounds like some countries that I learned about in school, where the government was in charge and parents were just hanging around.
Yeah.
This is bad. Thank you all for tuning in, and please go to the website and look it up. And remember, as I've been telling you, you have to put in S69 from 2025 because these numbers get used over the years, and so it's very important to put in the date so you get the right bill. So thank you very much. We'll see you in a couple of days.